Hey guys, let's do some function domains. So here you have a function. Let's make some really important observations. It begins at -1, ends at +1. Above that, here the curve is solid. Never mind the little gaps I was double tracing, not important, right? The point is the curve is solid, no holes, no gaps. Now here, that means the domain can be found as follows. At -1 you put a bracket, at +1 you put a bracket, so that's steps 2. And then because again this curve above is solid the entire time, that means you shade from -1 to +1. That means for every x, there's a corresponding output of y. So that means the domain is an interval notation, bracket -1, comma +1, close bracket. An example here, but let's look at the curve first. So the difference is now at -2, as you can see, there's a hole, and at +2, it's solid, and then when you go along the curve, it's a solid curve. That's important to understand. So that means over here, and this picture looks like this. First, I put a hole at -2, step 1. Step 2, I put a solid dot at +2. Step 3, I shade here between them, so that's solid. Why? Because the curve above is solid, that's why. Okay, that means this open hole translates into a parentheses. That means this solid dot here at step 2 translates into a bracket, and you put -2, comma 2. That's the interval form of the domain. And the last part is the trickiest one. Let's look at it here. So now you have a curve that looks like this. It's got holes in it. So step 1, because this has a hole here, you put a hole at -3. Because there's a hole here, that means you put a hole at -1. Because there are two holes here, they're aligned, that means you put a hole at +1. And lastly, because here this is solid, that means a +2, you put a solid dot. Then you shade, because the piece that goes from here to here is solid, that means you shade from -3 to -1. Because the piece that goes from here to here is solid, that means you shade from -1 to +1. Because the piece that goes from here to here is solid, you shade from 1 to +2. So then you write this in interval notation. That's the trickiest part. Parentheses, -3 comma -1, union, you jump over the hole, -1 to +1, union, you jump over the second hole, and then you go 1 to 2. This part especially is a bit tricky, so if you want, you can deconstruct it in more detail as follows. There's an enlarged version of it. -3, you have a hole, so that translates into a parentheses. Then you put the number -3, comma -1. Then you hit -1. So you put a parentheses. You hop over the hole with a union, and then you resume right on the other side of the -1. So you need -1, parentheses, union, parentheses, -1. You need to have all of these little objects present. Then this is solid, so you go all the way across, and then you hit +1 from the left side. So you put a parentheses down. You gotta hop over the whole union. You resume right on the other side of it. So parentheses 1, and then you hit the 2, so that translates into a bracket. So that's how, if you want to really see it in a lot more detail, if you like, it was helpful.